Cast, and I remind all those present that their words and actions will be broadcast to a wider audience, and certain conduct is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Should any person not wish to be recorded, I advise that they should leave the meeting room prior to any statements being made. Any defamatory statements made are not the position of the Council and remain an individual's opinion. Council accepts no responsibility for any defamatory statements, and all liability remains with the person making the remarks. And secondly, I'd like to do the acknowledgement to country. I'd like to acknowledge the Kamilaroi people who are the traditional custodians of this land. I'd also like to pay respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to any other Aboriginal people here this evening. And now, if we could all be upstanding, please, for the meeting prayer. Almighty God, we humbly beseech Thee to vouchsafe Thy blessing upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of Thy glory and the true welfare of the people of the Regional Council and Australia. Amen. Amen. Thank you. And now, councillors, I'd like to formally declare the meeting open. First item on the agenda is apologies and leave of absence, and we have a leave of absence request from Councillor Inglis for this evening. Item 2 on the agenda is... we need to move her in a second. So Councillor Betts and Councillor Impey, thank you. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 2, community consultation. We have one member of the community to make representation to the council this evening. I'll invite Penny Milson to come forward to the rostrum, please, Penny, and if you could just keep your presentation to around 3 minutes, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Councillor Murray. You'll notice on your desk there's a hard copy of my slide presentation which the council staff kindly created for you. So, good evening, councillors. Can everybody hear me? Senior Executive, I speak tonight in support of item 8.1, Urban Street Tree Management Plan. I actually had the opportunity to speak to you all a few years ago when the Trees for the Tamworth Region motion was put up by Councillor Tickle on the 27th of March 2018. If my memory serves me right, the motion was unanimously supported, and I actually wish to congratulate Council on progress since then, particularly the formation of an advisory committee which has led the development of the draft plan. In my last presentation, I highlighted the broad benefits of green spaces and trees in terms of our value to health and well-being. So obviously an aesthetically appealing shaded neighbourhood is more likely to encourage walking and play and social interaction than one which is dominated by hot, hard surfaces. Other research document the value of trees in terms of counteracting urban heat islands and reducing power prices and also increasing the value of real estate. So my purpose tonight is to implore you to authorise the public exhibition period. I believe this will raise awareness of your plan, widen the net to ensure the knowledge of more local experts is tapped, and that we broaden ownership of this wonderful strategy to more members of our community. Now, going to the second slide, I'd like to tell you about a project in my local neighbourhood which Council has supported. Earlier this year, I saw Councillor Tickle and I said, do you think Council would ever give us permission to plant trees on the block at the end of our street? I was thrilled with what transpired, an on-site meeting with Councillor Tickle and Hugh Leckie to discuss the how, when, what and why of a tree planting day on this underutilised piece of land which had a big drain running through it. Now, a key desire for me was to plant native trees and shrubs, preferably those indigenous to our region. Just moving to the next slide, you'll see the objectives that we discussed that day. Plant native trees and shrubs on this particular site, thereby supporting local bird life, wildlife and biodiversity, beautifying a largely unutilised block, offering the shade, a water-wise urban forest and offering local residents an opportunity to meet their neighbours. So on the next slide you'll see a copy of the flyer that I created. I texted it to my friends and family who were in the immediate vicinity of Currawong Park. And I also did a letterbox drop to about 20 households in that local area. On the next slide, you'll see some photos. The result was that council prepared the site by digging the holes and deep watering, delivering the mulch, tree guards and tube stock. A council staff member came on the day to provide an induction. We had 27 people from 13 households participate, and the majority of those committed to looking after their adopted trees in the coming months. On the next slide, you'll see a couple more photos. You might like to know we ranged in age from 12 months to 84 years. Participants met their neighbours, in some cases for the very first time. It was fantastic. With the support of council, for me as that community leader, I guess you'd say, for this project, it was actually easy to pull off. And I'd really love to see this model considered for other parts of Tamworth and our smaller towns and villages. In conclusion, I'd like to give a plug, where appropriate, to give priority to natives. Biodiversity loss is a major concern. I learned recently at Tamworth Regional Gallery art exhibition that 136 plant and animal species in our region are vulnerable and we're at risk of losing them. Birds, bees and bats are fundamental parts of our ecosystem, and in fact, we need them more than they need us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thompson. Councillors, that brings our community consultation to an end, and we'll move on now to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. With Councillor Wilson and Councillor Betts, thank you. Any matters arising from those minutes? Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Item 4, disclosures of interest. Any Councillor MP?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Well, this one's a non-pecuniary insignificant interest, and that is to item 9.1 in relation to the Careers Network event. Being a careers advisor at a school with students and parents who will benefit from that event, as well as my own personal benefit in that it will become a networking meeting for people such as myself in my role. So I guess I'm seeking advice on whether I should remain or not remain in the chamber, given that there is no monetary sort of significance there. It's really just a support to the role that I have as a full-time employee with Kairos.
Any comments, Mr. General Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, nobody can actually tell you you've got a conflict. That's a personal decision of yours. Given your circumstances and the fact that you are closely linked to an event of this particular nature and it relates directly to your employment, I would suggest a perception from the public would be that you may have a conflict of interest. But again, it's your decision as to whether you would or would not leave the chamber.
Thanks, Mr. General Manager. I think I should leave the chamber.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor MP. Any other disclosures, Councillor Rodder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 11.1, which becomes 12.1 in closed council, proposed lease of Tamworth Hockey Association Incorporated. I am an executive of one of the standing committees. The family play hockey, so I'm registering a less than significant non-pecuniary interest. I will remain in the chamber and participate in discussion.
Thank you. Any further disclosures, councillors? If not, we will move on. We have no mayoral minute nor notice of motion. That brings us then to item 7.1. With Councillor Wilson and Councillor Webb. Thank you. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I will, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, first of all, I'd like to compliment the author of this report, our Director Gina Verity. It was well researched, thorough, balanced and objective. This report actually came about because of a notice of motion that was put forward by Councillor Rodder. It suggested that Tamworth Regional Council lacked transparency and was in its dealing with developers, and that we needed to look at intensifying the process that was already in place. I must admit I found that confronting, probably for Tamworth Council and the developers, because as a council I certainly hadn't had anything like this indicated to me. However, this report is an amazing report. It endorses that comparatively Tamworth Regional Council sits and remains well above every benchmark that it should. Our current process is shown as legal, accountable, appropriate and respectful to local and external and potential developers. It's a process that has integrity and appropriate integrity. I think it's quite damaging to organisations to cast aspersions, but no doubt the research and the time put into this has shown otherwise. However, Mr. Mayor, this report didn't come about overnight, and I'm quite interested to know if there was an estimate of the costing, because the research and the time put into a report that there really was no obvious indication for. In other words, there'd been no excessive complaints, there'd been no formal complaints submitted to Ombudsman or any other organisation. So if I can ask perhaps the Director through you, Mr. Mayor, if we've got an estimate of the time invested and perhaps the costing to have this.
Ms Verica, do you have a comment there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I don't actually have an estimate of time or cost, but yes, there was significant time spent both by myself and my executive assistant in contacting other councils, getting those statistics from the other councils. I myself did a lot of research into relevant legislation. I also called on for our internal auditor for some assistance. So certainly there was staff not only from my directorate but other directorates involved in preparing the information that went into the report.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just say, I think that shows that there needs to be absolutely sound ground. When we ask for reports to come forward, they need to be based on fairly substantial and a fairly substantial need demonstrated, because this actually costs the ratepayers considerably.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Rodder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am disappointed about the result of this for a number of reasons. Firstly, point 2 indicated that we would receive, this is from the original notice of motion, indicated that we would receive guidance on options to develop a policy framework that ensures public accountability and transparency of councillor and council staff interactions with developers and developer representatives. This is not the outcome I had hoped. In relation to the official statistics pertaining to complaints, they look good but hide the grizzles in the community by people that know they will be required to have solid evidence if they actually make a complaint. Otherwise, their concerns will fall on deaf ears, fear the consequences of making a complaint may find them ostracised in the community for rocking the boat, or making a complaint to the Office of Local Government or New South Wales ICAC would also be futile. My proposal is more about addressing negative perceptions that exist in our community rather than consideration of official complaint statistics. We didn't have to investigate the records of other local government areas or how many LGAs had such a register. I had hoped that we'd show leadership as a region that values transparency and accountability and truly is open for business. The system would not have been overly onerous, either with a simple phone or iPad app able to record the necessary information. What I find to be most disappointing feature of my time as a councillor is that I've forgotten how many occasions people have complained to me with words to the effect that if you contract developer X or builder Y, your development will progress seamlessly, but if you don't, expect to suffer delays. I find this perception of our region a tragedy, hence my proposal, which was intended to clear the air. I believe this matter may soon be taken out of our hands with a report issued by the New South Wales ICAC that local councils faced considerable risk of improper influence and should be regulated by lobbying laws, noting its recent inquiry into the former Canterbury Council. We can all pat ourselves on the back based on the statistics, but perceptions matter, and this is a failure to our community to deliver policy that would enhance open, transparent and accountable representation and enhance local democracy. I thought point E of the policy implications encapsulates the drama of the recommendation. A region of progressive leadership, L21, transparency and accountability of government. I can't support this recommendation, and I believe at some stage in the near future will be subject to a system imposed by the New South Wales Government. I thought we could have shown leadership on this important matter. And in relation to the issue of cost, I sincerely hope that Councillor Wilson will not submit a request for a report to council in the future if she hasn't considered the relevant costs. I mean, we're here to represent our community, and I mean, we can't do that without obviously sometimes asking our staff, council staff, to investigate matters. Thank you.
Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Tickle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly support the recommendation as it stands, and I thank the staff for their research and delivering this excellent report. It's certainly it's there for everybody to see. Whether we like statistics or not, they're there. Whether we like comparing with other councils, we do that regularly. We do it with rates to show that Tamworth Council rates are lower than most other areas, so why not do it with complaints? Our record keeping procedures, point 5, they're there for everybody to see. Perceptions, where do you start and where do you finish with perceptions, for heaven's sake? We're here to do a job. We've got strong leadership. The community have elected us to represent them, and in so doing, trust us to do our job. I trust our staff. We've got an excellent report before us. I've personally never had any complaints. All I have is commendations. How wonderful it is to be in Tamworth. How wonderful it is to see all the development happening. I don't get caught up with petty say-sos and hearsays and everything else. We'd never get anywhere. So let's get on with the job. Let's be proud of where we live. Let's be proud of all the development that's happening around out there. Tamworth is going full steam ahead. We must be doing a lot of things right. We don't have time to stop and be doing these unnecessary reports. However, it's there. I thank you. It's what we all knew. We're doing a great job. We've got good record keeping. It's there for anybody to turn up, have a look at.
Thank you. Any comments, councillors? Councillor Webb?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Rodder raised this issue some time ago, and he raised that because obviously people have spoken to him about certain perceptions. And I think what this report's been able to do, and thanks Mark for doing that, because what this report's been able to do is actually demonstrate to the people in our region that we are actually doing what we should be doing, and we're doing it pretty well. And when you do have a look at those complaints against us and other councils, we actually are probably performing above many of the other organisations such as ours across the state. But I think if we look, and the important thing is to look at the current record keeping procedures, and if we have a look at item 5 in the commentary, there's a pretty good description of how records are taken down, kept, whether they be emails, phone calls or whatever they might be. And those records at 3 different levels are kept and are available for public, the public to have a look at. And I really think that what this has probably done, it's highlighted to me, and I just hope that the community can have a look at this and say, well, hang on, we probably feel a little bit more comfortable about this now, because really what this report's showing is that Tamworth Regional Council is acting appropriately, and those perceptions are out there, and there will still be perceptions about many things every day into the future. Whole range of things, doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter where it is. But I think we've been able to demonstrate here that we're doing a fairly good job, and we are meeting and ticking all of the boxes and meeting all the requirements that we need to meet. But also, we've been transparent about what we're doing, and I think that's the important part, and I'm pleased the report has been done, because it's been able to demonstrate that we are actually doing that in a very good way.
Thank you. Councillor Betts?
Yes, thanks Mr Mayor. Yes, I too will support the recommendation, and I agree certainly with my 3 fellow councillors that spoke for the motion. This report really, to me, is a great summary of the transparency of this council and the ability for anyone in the community to have access to any of the mechanisms to register concerns of issues and any of the internal mechanisms, they can do that. the state mechanisms through the Office of Local Government, the Ombudsman and ICAC. And it's very, very important to know that of those complaints or issues that were raised with any of those agencies, none of them were found to be proven. And it just demonstrates that transparency in this organisation exists, and we are significantly lower than anyone else in the state in our category. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? If not, Councillor Wilson, you wish to close the
I'll
debate?
just close the debate. Mr Mayor, perception does count, but so does reality. And the local community has every right to feel confident in the way Tamworth Council is working, the integrity of the staff and the will of the staff to get, and the organisation to get things done right, legally, appropriately and with respect. And this report certainly endorses that.
Thank you, and that closes the debate. Councillors, I will now put the motion. Those in favour of the motion? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 7.2. Councillor Wilson and Councillor Webb, thank you. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Mr Mayor, Heritage is really moving along really well, and there's some really great things in this report. One, the $50,000 grant for the Register of Significant Heritage Cultural Sites, which is really good to see. And I'd just like to say that we're constantly being endorsed that the future of our heritage, our built and our site heritage, lies in it being embedded in the LEP. And as a new LEP is being formed, I think that will be realistic in how it seeks to not only protect our heritage, built social, cultural, but also move it on into the future, which is really great. Also, just a comment there with the working with the new ULG that's taken over from John Holland with the railway, there certainly is a really positive will there to look at the future use, sound use of the railway station buildings. So they're three really good things that have been happening there.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Indy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I think we're in a unique position here in our area that the West Tamworth Railway Station not only has the potential to be brought back to its former glory, but also to be used and utilised again. We know that in the Blueprint 100 there is the potential for a rail link to connect many parts of Tamworth. And so indeed, as Tamworth grows, and with a quite unique rail link potentially possible, we have the ability, or there is the ability for the station at West Tamworth to be used as well as admired for what it is and for the history it has. So yes, I think in terms of council writing, I think it's a very good idea.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? Councillor Rodda?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in relation to West Tamworth Railway Station, we have, many of us actually went and had a look at that probably almost 2 years ago or more, and it concerns me that 2 years later it's still in a dilapidated condition and probably worse, and it does worry me that the longer that drags on, that government and obviously the replacement to John Holland delay any action or spending of significant funds on it to upgrade it, then it's going to be completely, it would be very difficult to get it back from the condition that it's falling into, the condition of disrepair that it's falling into. So, I mean, whatever we do as a council, if we can get some sort of agreement from the government to, invest some funds in there, and I'm sure they've got plenty. There's certainly plenty spent in the metropolitan areas that they could otherwise send out here. It would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Item 8.1. Councillor Tickle and Councillor Wilson. Thank you. Councillor Tickle, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, the Urban Street Tree Management Plan. This is a comprehensive guide and a culmination of a lot of thoughts and efforts by many people, notably the Urban Street Tree Advisory Committee, a panel of consisting of staff, councillors and industry experts who've given it their time and expertise to help develop this plan, which is essentially a guide for council, but it's also there are also many sections in here which residents and the broader community will also benefit greatly by, including the street tree species list, recommended feature park tree list. These species lists were as a result of reviewing our existing ones, and of course given the drought conditions, the drought proved what survived or didn't survive in extreme conditions. So many species that were in the former list are not on the new list. It's very well developed, and the staff have put this together beautifully, and the input set from the committee. Of course, the overall aim is to green and cool the Tamworth region, increase our green canopy, create more shade, create more places for habitat, shaded pathways, shaded parks, create more outdoor activity. It's good for our health and well-being. Here in Ray Walsh House, staff every day enjoy the beautiful plains trees that were planted a very long time ago. So integral to the success of our future tree planting is to plant trees for the long term and to plant the right tree, just like we see the plane trees down here in Cable Avenue. The right tree in the right place and planted the right way and with the right maintenance. All through this process, it is continually reiterated about the importance of maintenance, and therefore that has been costed into all our plans when growing trees. It's just not acceptable to put a tree in the ground and go away and leave it. We must have that ongoing maintenance to establish the tree, to have the aim, to have the green canopy that we see down here, to have this green canopy, the avenues of greenery. It enhances spaces, increases the livability of areas, it's good for our health, it's proven that it's good for mental health. For loneliness, people can go out, wander, see someone to say hello to. It's got many benefits. And it also increases the value of property, not only residential property, but commercial and industrial property. That has been proven as well. So I thank everyone who's been involved with this. The staff have done a wonderful job, our community and our tree committee. I said earlier, have given it their time. Many of them are in business and they've really got behind this, and still there are many other aspects of the original motion still to be addressed, but a lot of them have been addressed in here. And I'm also thankful to community groups that have already got on board with this. We can't do anything without the support of our community. We know that. How wonderful this is. Currawong Park, do you know where it is? The corner of Fitzroy and Raglan Streets. Go and have a look. 54 trees planted in there for community planting day. Council prepared the holes by ripping. Got to have a big hole dug and plenty of water in it before you do anything. And then the community, with Penny's project management and guidance, brought everyone together, and what a great neighbourhood project. And it's all an undertaking there by those individuals. They've got their numbered corporates. They're responsible for looking after it. And it's brought that community together. Just today, I know of 40 trees in my immediate neighbourhood that have been planted. People are getting behind this. So we've got guidance to offer people, but also as a council, we have to ensure that we do it correctly, and particularly in new subdivisions, there's an area that we do have to concentrate on and get those greened up to improve the amenity of our whole area.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? No? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Roddick. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to endorse the comments of Councillor Tickle and also the speaker in community consultation. And I do agree with that speaker that it's quite evident from the patches of trees that have been planted around Tamworth in the last year and a half, 2 years, that natives have certainly responded the best. They might not necessarily be natives to our region, but they are natives, and Australian natives, and they certainly have done extremely well. Some that have been almost less than 10 centimetres, I've seen more than a metre high in that time. And the only thing I would say is now that we've got this plan, that we need to implement it hastily. Purely because we've had now a year and a half of pretty good rain events, and you don't know how long this weather's going to last, and nothing has responded better. Those trees have responded very well, I should say, to the weather events of the last year and a half, and I think that we need to take advantage of that and get as many in the ground as we possibly can between now and the next drought.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Wilson, thank you.
Mr Mayor, no one can say this draft management plan came easily. It didn't. It was jolly hard work. And I'd like to compliment Councillor Tickle because she's really driven it well, and to the staff. And I think as an organisation, we've all come a long way through the formation of this urban street tree management plan. It hasn't been easy. There's been a lot of learning in every directorate. And I think in that way, we've seen that development needs to be in tandem with greening. Our greening needs to grow as quickly as our development is. And our speaker, Penny Milson, mentioned the same thing. It's with mental wellbeing, health wellbeing, the environment, all sorts of things. But getting to the nitty-gritty of how to pass that on has been hard work, and compliments to the advisory group. They've been dedicated, they've been responsible, and they've been innovative, and this has appeared. So I really look forward to our future in terms of having a greener and a healthier and a more environmentally sound place in which our children can grow and thrive.
Thank you. Councillor Betts.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Just very, very briefly, I totally support my fellow councillors' sentiments. And I think it's absolutely critical that council, and I think it was highlighted in the our guest speaker, that it is absolutely critical that council is involved to help out, to actually do the preparation of the ground, because if you put a little tiny hole and geometry in, it doesn't survive. But if you prepare it properly and have community ownership and participation, it will. And history has shown us that in, the career of Tamworth Regional Council and now previous councils. When you have the community involved and have community ownership and in partnership with council, it succeeds. So I do commend the tree working group and the community. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ramsey.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd go one step further and suggest that tree planting is probably one of the most important private-public partnerships a community can ever have. Not only does it support and assist what's already been mentioned, but it also attracts people both to move here and to stay here. We've just had a significant event here over the last weekend, the National Primary, the Primary Games, somewhere in the order of, I think, 2,000 odd people, many of whom came from outside the region, other regional areas, and they visit this city and this region, and if they like what they see, they'll perhaps want to move here. And one of the only reasons why they'll like what they see, apart from the nice cafes and restaurants and so forth, which is a little limited at the moment, is if it's green as possible can be. And that's where tree planting is such an effective way of being able to help our city and our region grow.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Tickle, to close the debate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Growing trees, as many as we can in a short amount of time, that is okay, but integral to the success of all our tree planting is that we must remember we have to budget for, not only in dollar terms, but in people's man hours, women hours, to look after them. As some Councillor Betts said, you can't just dig a little hole with a trowel and put the tree in and walk away. It's a waste of time. We want to plant for the long term. We want to stop seeing, we don't want to see any more subdivisions void of trees. we've got subdivisions here that aren't attractive at all simply because they don't have the trees. However, at some point in time it is part of our policy to have them in subdivisions. So we are addressing that side as well. We hope to see good progress there, to see subdivisions greened up, just not simply tree in the ground, walk away, tick, it's been done. It has to be done properly, and this is something that our advisory committee keeps saying, is to do it well, to have best practice. But in saying that, we have got the community coming with us. So we've had the excellent example tonight. We have one of the regional buildings, regional banks, who planting thousands of natives. We also have our local Rotary clubs that have come together, and with an aim of 1,000 trees, not necessarily all in one year. It's going to be done in components. It's been done in conjunction with council, of course, to do it in the best possible way, and it's going to involve sporting groups. It's going to be at our athletics centre, and what a wonderful project to involve some of the sporting groups and again give ownership to people. That's on council land, but we also are developing plans to encourage residents to take ownership in their street or in their cul-de-sac to grow trees, and we're going to have a nice little friendly guide which the communications team are doing a wonderful job on to assist people in that process. So again, thanks to everyone involved and to my fellow councillors for supporting this, and of course to the staff and the community.
Thank you. Councillors, I'd now like to put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Item 8.2 with Councillor Webb.
Mr Mayor, I'm going to move a motion, but it's not the one printed. I'd like to read what I'd like to move if I can get a seconder. That is that the council proceed with action to clear the Peel River with the intent to construct a weir. Point 3, sorry, I'll start again. I'd like to move that we receive and note the report, but item 2 that point 2 will change to what I just spoke about, and there will be a point 3 that said a further report to be given on what actions need to be taken to support this action. If I can get a second.
Councillor Maxwell seconding the...
Mr Mayor, can I just clarify? Councillor Webb, you said, so there is no point 2 in your motion?
My apologies, I started off incorrectly. I would like to say that I'll move with point 1, which says we receive and note the report, and further that council proceed with action to clear the Peel River with the intent to construct a weir. And then we have point 3, which is needed because we need to then get a further report on what actions need to be taken to support this action.
So we have a seconder in Councillor Maxwell. So Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Oh, I will, Mr Mayor. Look, it's been my intention, and I know the intention of a lot within our community and many that sit around this table, to do what we can to try and improve the amenity of this city. This city has many, many great things going for it. But unlike other regional cities, like Dubbo, for example, like Wagga, for example, we do not have a nice body of water in the centre of our CBD or close to our CBD. And I think for the really to build a better and healthier community, we do need to have that body of water within the confines of the Peel River and within the confines of the CBD. So putting a weir in the Peel River, backing water up behind what might be the Bicentennial Park and then the hopscotch area there where the playground is, will just create a beautiful amenity for the city, create many opportunities for many things, many other activities to occur, and family activities I'm talking about. We've got access from both sides of the river. There could be things like canoeing. There could be fishing that if there's a big stretch of water with a 50, 60, 70 megalitres of water in that. There will be opportunities for a bit of fishing. But most of all, there'll be opportunities there for families to get together and sit around and talk and have fun and play on the riverbanks with a body of water in front of them. Nothing more relaxing, nothing better for a community such as ours. It's the one thing this city does not have. Now, I do know that this will be a very difficult path to go down, because there will be legislation that we're going to have to push through to try and get that river cleaned out to start with, and secondly to get a weir in with fish ladders and all sorts of things. But if we don't have a crack at it, then it's not going to happen. And I, for one, think that we should be pushing with vigour to make this happen. Other cities have got it, we haven't got it. Why can't we have it? Why can't we make our city a better place? Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Webb, just a question. You are aware of the way the motion reads, proceed with action to clear the river in order to construct a weir. Can you better explain what action, because of the legislative requirements, that could be construed that we maybe be asking the staff to go down there tomorrow with a chainsaw and cut all those trees out of the riverbed.
To proceed with action, and I think in dot point 3 I've addressed that, we proceed with an action, and that action will be to come back to us with a report that can advise us on what steps we need to take, to progress this to firstly getting the river cleaned out, because it's an absolute disgrace when you drive across the bridge and look down either way of the river. And that action then will give us some guidance, that third action will give us some guidance on what we need to do to clear the river. And then, of course, what other actions need to be taken by this council to actually then go down the track of developing a plan to build a weir.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Wilson?
Mr Mayor, I wanted a weir in this in the centre of this town forever. I used to organise raft races down there, but I have real difficulty supporting this. First of all, to ask a further report be given on what actions are needed to support this action after it's happened, and proceed with an action to clear the river in order to construct a weir. I think we need to decide first of all what sort of weir, and therefore what sort of clearing needs to take place. So, one, I am absolutely in favour of having a weir. Give my eye teeth to have a weir in the centre of town. But to proceed with an action before we know what sort of weir, and then ask for a report and tell them what outcome we want before it's written, is really difficult to support. So perhaps we need to look at it, receive and note the report.
Councillor Wilson, the motion has been moved and seconded. Your opportunities now are to either support or otherwise the motion.
I'm voicing support for the idea, but not for the way that...
And you're speaking against the motion.
I'm speaking against the motion because it is difficult to support in the terms in which it's been presented.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to make comment on the motion? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I certainly support the idea as well. The issue, of course, will be is obviously potentially the state government bodies like Fisheries and Water New South Wales that might, so they're big hurdles to probably get over. So I wonder whether we might tweak it a little bit to basically seek advice from them about how far they would let us go with such a plan, whether it included a weir or not. I mean, I could live with the idea that we actually get rid of all those woody weeds, those woody environmental weeds that are all along the banks. I could certainly accept that. If we couldn't get the weir across the line, then it would be great to know that we could actually clear out some of that mess adjacent on both banks and in the river bed that might actually enhance that space. If we couldn't get a weir proposal, so it'd be great if we could somehow incorporate those hurdles within the motion, so we could first of all see about the appetite from the state government for a weir. Secondly, and of course the supporting a cost. And also, if they didn't, would they support the removal of the woody weeds that are a real problem, not only here, but also our neighbours down down the riverway, the riverine corridor, I should say, into the Namoy. You know, there's cestrum, there's privet, there's giant elephant grass, there's white cedar trees. There's a whole host of horrible weeds that should just go. And I'm sure that if we couldn't get a weir across the line, the next best thing would be to actually clear that up so it's actually an inviting place to go down and enjoy.
Thank you. Councillor Betts.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Totally support a weir. The issue I have with the proposed amendment there is that to clear the river, and I know that it will almost be impossible if we put that there. We need to, I would suggest, if it was at all possible in the motion, to proceed with action in order to construct a weir, but leave the clearing out, because the issues that we're going to have and face, because I've done a fair bit of research on this, and the government agencies that put issues in front of us are going to make it very difficult. Totally support the weir, but we need to make sure that it's going to be achievable. Looking at the body of the report for the motion was that it's pretty much was looked at water security only, and it had a couple of flaws in it. In the appendix, page 29, had that it didn't really address what the extent of the aquifer, the alluvial aquifer was. It was only just the body of the water that was held in those weirs. The retention of the water under the aquifer, which was about a 5 metre aquifer that was basically indicated across those fields. And when you look at the release of from Chaffey Dam to get water to Tamworth previously through the drought, we were letting out, or they were letting out 2 megalitres to get 1 megalitre in Tamworth. That was going in underneath the aquifer. They didn't take that into account on this particular report, so that needs to be looked at. That's another issue. To me, we need to, and I totally support the amendment without the clearing, is that we need to look at the constructing of a weir. Because of the aesthetics, we're growing to a population of 100, despite whether we have a special activation precinct with government funding or it just with natural growth. By 2060, we'll get to 100,000 population, and we need that sort of amenity in the centre of our city. As Councillor Webb said, the other cities around, Wagga, Dubbo, Forbes have got some funding just recently to do some works. Inverell. We need to have the same sort of thing because it's conducive to that. Agree with Councillor Rodder implicitly that we need to get rid of those woody weeds. I was down there this week with a group of people just walking along looking at the vegetation, the weed vegetation in that river, and it's quite extensive, and we could certainly be working on that even as we organise the proposal for an action for a weir. So I do support the weir and just have trouble with that clearing the river. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors, there seems to be a fairly strong opinion emerging, and with dot point 2 being a bit of a barrier to this motion, is there any consideration for an amendment to the motion so that we can progress the debate, because we still only have one motion before us? Councillor Impey.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I thought I'd go and say something. I think the removal of the weeds and the trees and things in the river, I think that's exclusive to the weir itself. I think that's just another issue on top of the weir and the original report was about a weir itself. So, I mean, I think we all agree that we want the area to look a whole lot nicer than what it does, and one part of that is to get rid of those trees that have grown up in the middle of the river on either side of the bridge, and I agree that they need to go, but maybe there's a perfect opportunity here for what I mentioned before, another private-public partnership, but this time between state government and community. I'm sure if somebody within the department, the Department of Water, I think, who looks after the river, the Department of Water, they came out and said, look, we want some members of the community to partner with us and volunteer their time and have a big working bee down there at the river, and we will make this happen. I'm sure we'll have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people coming from out of the community to want to do it. So the appetite will be there. So maybe it's a challenge for that state government department to come up with a way of being able to make that particular part of
of the amendment happen. But in the terms of the where, look, the report, I'll be a little bit critical of the report. It sounded to me as if somebody had written the report in such a way that they didn't want the where to happen. And I'm sure that's not the case. But there was no gated option, or the gated option wasn't costed. There was no detailed hydraulic study. There was no structural analysis made of the weir itself. And this is all written in the report. And they even went as far as suggesting that the weir will be a declared dam. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure whether or not the weir up at Inverell is classified as a declared dam. But I mean, the water area there is within our Bicentennial Park Master Plan. It's an important part of our community, and it's an area that our community sadly need. As has been mentioned, Wagga and Dubbo and other places, they have wonderful water and aquatic areas. And by creating a more extensive water space, we then are able to build an ecosystem that currently isn't there. So anyway, I've had my say.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
Mr Mayor, if it satisfies the other councils, I mean, I'm quite clear on what I'm saying here. But if it satisfies the other councillors, I could just say could we call on a further report be given on what actions need to be taken to support the clearing of the river and constructing a weir. I hear what Councillor Betts is saying, but we have to clear the river before we build the weir, otherwise we're wasting our time.
Yeah, I think that might be a bit more amenable to my fellow councillors. Councillor Maxwell, are you okay with your seconding? Thank you. So, Councillor Webb, would you like a right of reply? I think everyone's had the opportunity to make comment. So,
only, Mr Mayor, to say that this should have been done years ago. This should have been attacked 20 years ago, 30 years ago. This city should have had a water feature through in the Peel River with a weir or what have you 20 or 30 years ago. Why it hasn't happened, I don't know. I know it's going to be difficult to get it up now, but I have to say, it doesn't matter what you do these days, it's very, very hard to get anything done. And because there's so much red and green tape around everything that we do. But I think that we have to make a move. The community out there, the community that I'm hearing, are saying, let's do it. I know the councillors that sit around the table are generally in support of doing this because it's going to make our city a better city. It's going to build a better community. So I'm happy to change that to what's written there, a further report to be given on what actions need to be taken to support the clearing of the river and the construction of the weir. And I hear what Councillor Betts says, but if we don't clear the river, all that woody weed and that debris, we're wasting our time building a weir.
thank you, Councillors. That now closes the debate. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Motion is carried. That brings us to item 9.1. Councillor Tickle, thank you. And seconded, Councillor Wilson, thank you. Councillor Tickle, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is an excellent opportunity to provide attendees with information and guidance on career paths and training opportunities. I note that I've actually been in attendance at these particular career network events in previous times. I haven't held one for a few years now, but there are quite a few providers, training providers there, and also we believe that there will be employers as well. So it is a wonderful opportunity, and it's one that I think that we should support in the fee waiver. I also hope, though, that trades will be well represented and the associated training providers. And there's too much emphasis, and it's been this way for many, many years, too much emphasis on university training, and the job outcomes are not always there. Obviously, we do need university. We've got wonderful engineers and so on, town planners, etc. on our own staff that have been to university. However, it's well known there are a lot of university graduates that are unemployed, and it's also well known that we have insufficient tradespeople, and this is a problem that has been happening for years. So I do hope with their expo that they will have trades and employers and training providers for those particular trades well represented on the day, because throughout not only Tamworth region but our entire region there's a shortage of skilled tradespeople, and we have to get the message into schools and to careers advisors that these are real jobs and that there are opportunities there.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make a comment? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Mr Logan, would you? Oh, Mr. You're right. Thanks. Councillors, that brings us now to item 10.1. Move Councillor Wilson and Councillor Betts. Thank you. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, Mr Mayor.
Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor MP.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, just I wasn't there at that particular the last meeting. I'm on that committee, but just for the sake of those who didn't see the report or aren't sure, I think it'd be a fantastic idea to see a Tamworth Short Film Festival in our city, in our region. One of the community members of that group suggested that as an idea, and I'd also love to see an annual arts festival. I think with those types of events, we have the ability to be able to turn our region into an even more culturally rich region than what it already is at the moment. So I had a big smile on my face when I read about those two parts of the minutes.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? Councillor Wilson?
Mr Mayor, can I just add to that, that community, the annual arts festival was actually an item introduced from a community member, and he's well on the way to getting a committee together to make that happen. So I agree with you, it's absolutely exciting event.
Thank you. Councillors, if we have no more discussion, I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The motion is carried. And now, before I call for a motion to have items 11.1 through 11.5 moved into closed council, are there any members of the community who wish to have any of those matters brought forward to open council? Any councillors wish to have any of those matters brought forward? If not, I'd invite those community members to leave the chamber, and thank you very much for your interest. Councillor Maxwell and Councillor Wilson, thank you. Those in favour, against, carried.
Thanks, Bruce. Councillors, report of the closed session of the ordinary council meeting held on the 13th of July 2021. In closed council, you considered 5 items, 12.1 through 12.5, and for all of those items, you adopted the recommendations as per the business plan.
Thank you. Could we have a motion to accept that, councillors? Councillor Impey and Councillor Webb. Those in favour, against, carried. And that brings our meeting to a close.